Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are visiting some of the areas worst hit by Hurricane Helene this Wednesday as residents struggle with the fallout from the storm that killed more than 160 people during its rampage through southeastern US states. Before leaving Washington, the president announced the deployment of up to 1,000 active duty soldiers to North Carolina to boost the emergency response effort. Harris's Republican rival, Donald Trump, has meanwhile been seeking to turn the Democrats' handling of the disaster into campaign fodder, as Laurent Berstecker explains.
Floating piles of debris stretching as far as the eye can see. The waters of Lake Lure were barely visible under the wreckage as North Carolina reckoned with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. All across the southeastern U.S. coast, residents and federal workers were coming to terms with the trail of destruction left by the powerful storm. In Asheville, Georgia, which was laid to waste by devastating floods, the mayor called on federal authorities to provide urgent and sustained assistance.
We have damage to our transportation, just roads buckled and collapsed, and is the cost and the time that's going to be needed to restore this community. And I don't want that to fade away in terms of the priority of our nation.
Rebuilding vital infrastructure, restoring power to over 1 million households, and providing shelter, food, and other essential goods to affected communities. A monumental task which U.S. officials already warn could take billions of dollars and several years to complete. On Wednesday, Joe Biden headed to North and South Carolina, where he took an aerial tour of some of the areas hardest hit by the storm. The president then vowed to provide relief and support for as long as necessary.
The damage is still being assessed, but many people are still unaccounted for. So I'm here to say the United States, the nation, has your back. The nation has your back. We're not leaving your back on your feet completely. There are no Democrats or Republicans, only Americans. And our job is to help as many people as we can, as quickly as we can, and as thoroughly as we can.
The White House on Wednesday also greenlit the deployment of 1,000 additional soldiers. They will join more than 10,000 National Guard and federal aid workers already on the ground to help with rescue and relief efforts.
For more, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson. Fraser, Joe Biden then visiting some of the worst hit areas. This hurricane, government agencies had, of course, been tracking it, giving warnings about its strength. But the very future of those agencies and the work that they do, they could be under threat by a potential Trump presidency. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is all revolving around something called Project 2025, which is a blueprint for a future Republican presidency put forward by a conservative think tank called the Heritage Foundation. Trump says that he doesn't have anything to do with this Project 2025, but it must be said a lot of the people who are the architects of this mandate are former Trump officials. So a lot of the Democrats in the United States are saying that this is what Donald Trump would be using if he were to get reelected. Under it, it calls for a host of different things, but some of the federal agencies that this mandate would dismantle or at least massively restructure include FEMA, who are overseeing the disaster relief in the wake of this hurricane, and also NOAA as well, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Now, NOAA has a lot under its mandate, including weather forecasting, but also climate monitoring, as well as coastal restoration and fisheries and more. Its mandate affects about a third of the American GDP. So it is a significant mandate that it has. And two of the organizations which fall under it include the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center, which of course both were pivotal in tracking Hurricane Helene as it made its way across the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Now, the Project 2025 calls for the full commercialization and full commercialization of forecasting models made by the National Weather Service. And it must be said as well, that also already happens. Things like people like AccuWeather and local TV forecasters used the NOAA data, the forecast models that it comes up with in their forecasts. So it is critical data. And ultimately, this all really comes down to climate change. The Project 2025 calls for the climate change the way that NOAA collects and assembles climate change data to be changed and to be less political in the eyes of this conservative think tank. It also says that NOAA is, quote, one of the primary components of the climate change alarm industry. It also is calling for a review of the National Hurricane Center, saying that its documentation should be presented neutrally rather than in what it says is a partisan way. And this all, again, stemming from that climate change debate, which some conservative parts of the United States are skeptical about. But one person who isn't skeptical about that is, of course, Joe Biden. He was asked the other day whether Hurricane Helene was the result of climate change, and he said absolutely, positively, unequivocally, yes, yes, yes. The data, it also should be pointed out that science does show that the hurricanes at the moment are becoming more intense and more frequent because of climate change, but that climate change itself is not the sole driver of these hurricanes.
And Fraser, what other proposals fall under this Project 2025, and how are the two candidates talking about it?
Well, there really is a big umbrella, 4 different pillars, really, of how a conservative presidency would look. Especially one of those pillars is a playbook, effectively, for the first 180 days of a presidency. The other parts of it call for disbanding things like the Department of Education, disbanding Homeland Security, and also rejigging the FBI as well. The quote from Project 2025 is that the FBI is a bloated, arrogant, and increasingly lawless organization. It must be said, it's not exactly a bastion of liberalism. Donald Trump is trying to distance himself from this, saying that he doesn't know what this is about and he has no connection to it. But the Democrats are trying to tie it around his neck and say that it ultimately is Donald Trump's playbook if he does get into power once again.
Fraser, we'll leave it there for now, but thank you so much for joining us. That's our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson. Well, it is